There's nothing that says Christmas more than ginger and molasses and all the spices. I promised y'all a gingerbread cake or gingerbread cookies. This recipe is out of the Home Comfort Cookbook, 1938. These are not a gingerbread cake, it's not a gingerbread cookie. But this recipe is called Ginger Drop Cakes. And what it reminds me of are your old-fashioned tea cakes. They're soft and pillowy like a cake, but yet also a cookie. So let's get all of our ingredients and get our cookies started and get them in the oven because I'm getting excited. Ginger drop cakes. Usually, like most recipes, you're going to start by creaming your shortening. And this recipe does call for a cup of shortening, but I'm going to be using our fresh rendered lard. And I took the time to make sure, because we keep our fresh lard in the refrigerator, so I took the time to kind of loosen it up. You can see how creamy it is. And you can do that because when you stick your jar in the refrigerator and you keep it in there like we do, we keep it on the bottom shelf, and that just keeps it, you know, longer, and we keep a lid on it, that way it doesn't get any the smells from your refrigerator, you know, that taste gets into your shortening or your lards and or your butters and stuff like that. But so I had just a little bit of warm water, and I stuck a cup of this, just I didn't boil it on the stove, I stuck it in that warm water so it would loosen the lard up. So you want your shortening or your lard, or you can excuse me, you can have your shortening, half shortening and half butter. And that's what this recipe is kind of telling you, because it starts out by saying cream shortening, butter, or butter and shortening mixed. So it's kind of giving you, you know, a few different options there. But we're going to be using a cup of our fresh lard. And it's already really creamy. But if you're using shortening, of course, you want to cream it really good. So you want to cream your shortening, and you want to gradually beat in your brown sugar. And this is packed brown sugar. I know a lot of recipes will call for brown sugar, and it won't tell you if it's packed or just loose. But usually, if they want it to be packed, then usually the recipe will tell you that. This one right here just says 1 cup of brown sugar. But I packed my brown sugar because I like brown sugar. So we're just going to cream the lard and the brown sugar. And you can do this with an electric mixer. And after you get your sugar creamed up really good, it says to go ahead and add your molasses, and I've got a whole cup of molasses, and this is just molasses that I bought at the store. It's Grandma's molasses is what it's called. Walmart carries it, and most of your grocery stores carry that. And it's a mild molasses. It's not real stout. I know back in the day they probably used a lot of fresh sorghum that had been processed. It's, you know, but this is pretty good. It said sorghum, but molasses. You can see how dark that molasses is, and that's going to make your cookies have a darker color. So I'm just going to mix the molasses into my lard and my brown sugar. And now they want me to put in 2 beaten eggs. Now I'm going to add a couple of ingredients that this recipe doesn't call for. Anytime that my grandma, she always made gingerbread cake. She always put a little bit of cloves and cinnamon in it. Even though this is a ginger drop cookie, but these are called ginger drop cakes, which I guess it's kind of like maybe when you're making tea cakes. It's kind of that texture. So we're going to put in 2 beaten eggs. And we're going to mix that in really good. And what you're seeing me use here is a dough whisk that you can pretty much use for a lot of different baking recipes. But this is made for when you're wanting to mix maybe a bread, biscuits, cookies, just a whole lot of things. But it is made for when you don't have a mixer and you got to do it by hand and mix up that bread dough. This really does it right here. And you can get it in my Amazon store. Y'all seen me use this on a lot of my recipes. Okay, we got our eggs beat in now. So now they want you to add the salt and the ginger. So what I've got in here is I've got my tablespoon. It calls for a whole tablespoon of ginger. And then I've got about a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and about 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. And then I've got my 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now usually you would mix your dry ingredients with your flour, your spices and stuff, but this recipe wants you to add it in with your wet ingredients. Now this does call for 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and they want you to melt that soda in a whole cup of hot water. Okay, I went and got my cup of hot water, and I've got 1 teaspoon of baking soda. I want you to dissolve that baking soda in that hot water. Now, the recipe says to alternate your water and your flour. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to put, now there's 4½ cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to put 1 cup of flour and some of my water. Okay, I'm going to add another cup or so of my flour. Probably a little bit more than that the way I'm scooping. Some more water. You may have to scrape the sides a little bit. I can really smell that molasses. Me and Danny love molasses with a little bit of butter stirred in it on a hot biscuit. Good. With some more flour. More water. Now your dough is going to start getting just a little bit stiffer. Now these cookies are what they call ginger drop cakes. I'm thinking are going to come out, like I said, kind of like your tea cakes. Well, that's a pretty color. Makes a really pretty batter. Okay, I'm going to put I'm going to leave about another half a cup in there. And I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of my water. Have y'all been thinking about what kind of cookies and stuff you're wanting to make for Christmas this year? I'm going to cut back quite a bit on mine. We made so much last year, I'm telling you. But you can always make it, and of course always freeze a lot of your cookies and candies and stuff and eat them on later in the year. Save some of it for your New Year's Eve party or something like that. Okay, I'm going to put the rest of my flour. I'm going to end it with flour. And stir this in. Now this book, the copyright on this book, like I said before, was 1938. How old this recipe is, I really don't know. And the recipe does not say anything, let's see. It doesn't say anything about chilling your dough. But if you wanted to, I don't guess it'd hurt nothing. But it come together really good stirring it by hand. You see how pretty that dough is. So pretty. Such a pretty color. Okay. Like I said, you can chill this for a little bit, and that's what I may do. It's really hot here in the house. We've got the stove going. The dough is a little bit loose. Sometimes your first batch of cookies might kind of spread out a little bit. But I think I'm going to let this dough sit for just a little bit before I might start making my cookies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up my mess here, get my dishes washed and put away, and we'll come back and we'll get our cookies on the cookie sheet, and we'll bake us up some really good ginger drop cakes, and we'll taste them and see if they're any good. These old-fashioned recipes like this, they're kind of hit and miss sometimes. But most of them turn out really wonderful. And there's just always just a few ingredients. Usually ingredients that you already have in your pantry. So I'm going to get busy cleaning up and we'll be back in just a minute. The recipe says to drop spoonfuls on well-greased tins or paper. Spread them well apart to allow for spreading. Bake in moderate oven for about 10 to 20 minutes. I've got mine set on 350, and I'm going to put my timer on for 10 minutes. And I'm going to say my oven, they're going to cook in probably 10 to 12 minutes, but we'll see. Now in my oven, and of course these, I didn't make them very big, but I had my timer set on 10 minutes. And they pretty much got done in 10 minutes. You sure don't want to leave them and let them get too brown. You see how brown they are on the bottom. These are good and done. Just right. So I'm going to go ahead, and I think I'm going to keep making them this size. I think that turned out really good. And you can use a cookie scoop if you want to. I'm sure most women back in the day didn't have cookie scoops. That's why they used 2 spoons. And there's my... It's always a day late and a dollar short. And still wants to keep on a ticking. I'm going to do something just a little bit different with this batch. And it's not nothing necessary. But I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of sugar on top of these. And just see if there's any difference. You can make them bigger than this. The dough feels pretty much just right. And I'm using my my antique sugar bucket here. And I've even got a flour sack in it that I put my sugar in. I'm just going to take a little bit of sugar and just kind of sprinkle the top a little bit. Like I said, it's not necessary. Okay, I'm going to get these in the oven. Turn my timer back on for 10 minutes. I think I'm even going to try some of these. I bought this. This is a silicone baking mold. And I bought this at, I'm pretty sure it was Home Goods. I think I gave $4 for it. So I filled it up with my dough, and I'm going to stick it in the oven. It may take a little bit longer for these to cook, but I'm going to keep an eye on them. But I just thought it'd be a cute idea. We'll see how they turn out. If they don't turn out, I won't make any more. We'll just keep making our drop cookies. They turned out really, really good. Tastes just like gingerbread. Made 3 dozen. Y'all have to try this recipe. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. So let's go and let's do a little tour of my Christmas cabin. What do you think? Home Comfort Cookbook. I hope y'all enjoyed this old vintage recipe. Ginger drop cakes. You're going to want these for your Christmas cookie collection. It is one wonderful old-fashioned recipe. I hope you enjoyed the tour of the cabin. Y'all stick around to the end of the video. Paul's going to read us a Christmas story about a snowman named Bob.
He wanted us to know. A snowman named just Bob. It was late that one Thanksgiving when Bob first came to me, a joyful day of food and fun with friends and family. We feasted well, as I recall, on Mother's fine cooked fare, then settled down to rest a while and nap without a care. No one knew what was to be, as daylight grew quite dim, that soon our lives would change so much, simply because of him. The weatherman reported that no snow was due that night, but as we slept the clouds rolled in, obscuring all the light. And though that weatherman had tried, he never could have said just what was forming in the sky directly overhead. The moon grew bright, then disappeared, then broke into a laugh. The stars began to dance a jig, the clouds just split in half. In retrospect, I do believe that magic came that night. No ordinary storm, you see, could stir up such a sight. The sky began to whip around, then settle on its way. The wind skipped lightly through the trees, inviting me to play. And late that eve there fell the first exquisite tiny flake, followed by another, and still others in their wake. And then, and this is when, I dare to say, that Bob first came to be, as peace fell lightly like a robe o'er every hill and tree. He fell up on my windowsill, he landed in my hair. He frosted all my neighbors' homes and blew through the air. Just when it seemed the storm might pass, or at least be quite mild, the moon came out and gave a wink, and then stood back and smiled. 'Twas like he knew the answer to a real-life mystery, a delightful understanding that would soon be clear to me. The snow took on an eerie cast, first pink, then blue, then gold. Then anxious little whirlwinds leaped around my feet so bold. Suddenly I heard Bob whisper. His voice was soft and kind. He asked me if I'd help him, then if I would so incline, to gather up those many flakes and roll them in a ball, till he could be and be with me in shape and form and all. But Bob, I cried, I just don't know where you are in all this, 'cause all of you is everywhere throughout this snowiness. You're scattered over everything. How do you recommend that I gather all your goodness up and make a perfect friend? 'Twas then Bob shared a secret, and I knew just what to do, for he whispered these few words to me that now I share with you. Friendship is a simple thing. The clue is just to start, as long as it is built on trust and love from in your heart. I ran into my mother's house to wake those sleepy folk. I bid them come and help me to roll, pat, and poke, and build that grand old snowman, and do a right good job to bring to life my special friend, my snowman named just Bob. We laughed and sang and ran about as Bob began to be. We gathered up what was needed. Everything was free. Some coal for eyes, a carrot nose, some sticks, a scarf, a hat, a smile so wide it warmed your heart, a coat, and that was that. Perhaps you may think so far that magic ruled that day, but so far we seem like nothing compared to what was on its way. For this is when our new friend Bob decided to awake. He opened up his twinkling eyes. His belly, it did shake. His voice, I do remember, was something of a dream. His countenance so pleasing, unearthly did it seem. And though you might be doubtful, a talking friend made out of snow, this is what we heard from Bob. He wanted us to know. You've given me my eyes so I might see and blink, a mouth, a hat, a carrot nose, so I might speak and think. The scarf indeed is cozy, it's sure to keep me warm, and thank you all for giving me such a shapely form. I hope it snows aplenty, so I might stay and share in all your loving friendship, your thoughtful tender care. But when it warms up, if in the spring you miss that I not near, put a sign in your front yard that reads, just Bob was here. Well, that was it. 'Twas all Bob said, that dreamy starry night. He said his piece, he closed his eyes, yet everything seemed right. We all joined in celebration, for his message was quite clear, that just like all good faithful friends, Bob is always near.